Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest Guest Talks webinar. Thank you all for tuning in. In today's discussion, we'll delve into the evolving landscape of early childhood education, exploring innovative approaches and strategies to lay a strong foundation for young learners. We've got a fantastic panel for you, and our expert speakers will share practical insights and real-world examples to help educators and parents navigate these transformative times. But first, for all attendees, you can find the control panel on the side. There's a Q&A tab. Please feel free to use it and ask us questions, as the panelists would love to hear your thoughts. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our chair and moderator, PamMundy, the Executive Director of PamMundy Associates, to introduce the rest of the panel. But please note that one of our panelists, Lara Hudson, is just having some technical issues, and she'll be with us shortly. Thank you, and over to you, Pam.
Thank you very much, Danny, and welcome everyone. I shall say good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And I know our panelists will explain to you where they are. I'm really glad that Danny introduced me, because it saves me having to say it, other than to say, I'm going to declare my hand and say, I'm an early years specialist. I never say expert, because I don't know everything there is to know yet, but I'm certainly joined by experts on our panel today. So rather than me waste time by introducing them, because they will do that far better by themselves, I'm going to ask each person in turn to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about who they are and where they are, and then we'll start this amazing discussion. And please do feel free to post any questions, make any comments, and I will do my best to pick those up either as we go or at the end of the session. I'll put some time aside for that. So could I start with Sari? Would you mind introducing yourself first, please?
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sari. I'm the Operation and Education Director for Babilou Middle East. So we are running Blossom Nurseries here in UAE. And I'm based in Dubai. I'm originally from Finland. You might hear it from my accent. It's a pleasure to be in this webinar today.
Thank you very much, Sari. Kaz, can I come to you next, please?
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Kaz Jude. I'm Head of Early Childhood at the Sheikh Zayed Private Academy for Girls. And early years is my passion. And in my spare time, I work as the leadership coach for early years practitioners. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Kaz. Lara, if you can hear us, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Hi, Pam. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lara Hudson. I'm the Director for Early Childhood and Development for the Innoventures group. I'm currently based in Dubai, but originally from the UK. 20 years in Dubai now, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon with everybody.
Thank you, Lara. I'm so glad you could hear us a little bit. Hopefully it will improve for you as we go through. And last but not least, Audrey.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Pam, for hosting this. I am Audrey Piccioli, currently living in Dubai, based here on my way to Italy now. Originally from Brazil, head of PrekG and early years specialist at Fairgreen International now in Dubai.
Thank you very much, ladies. That's great. Thank you. So now that you know who we all are, we are just going to have a lovely chat about early childhood, and you're going to be able to, I guess, look into the minds of people who spend their lives doing what we all love, those of you who are joining us today, which is early childhood. But what a minefield. What an absolute minefield. Everyone in the world has an opinion of what early childhood should be. We also have parents who have an opinion of what early childhood should be. And we're also at a very interesting point in education in general. Everything is changing. We have the interjection of AI, we have technology, we have this way, that way. We have so many philosophies, so many curricula. Finding the way through that and staying true to what we all believe and know about early childhood, I'm sure, is very, very difficult. So what I'm going to ask our panel to do is to think really carefully about how do we begin to interpret the future of early childhood, knowing that our children are still someone today. And I hear that word future so often. We're doing schools for the future, doing this for the future. I would say that's a bit late. The future is now. And the children who are in our hands, babies, right way through to the end of what we would call early childhood, are in a very interesting phase of education. It's our job to navigate it, but how on earth do we do it? Kaz, can I come to you first? How do you get us through this mire?
I think really what we need to go back to is what is early years education about, and it's all about values and relationships are key, and they're skills that children need for life. And I think we really need to focus deeply on our relationships. And if we get those right, not just the relationship child to child, but with the adults who work with them, and if they're right and children are happy coming to school, that will then give them the skills necessary to learn and really enjoy their time with us and the opportunity to be the best they can possibly be.
Well, sounds like a great idea. The question is, how do we do it? Audrey, where do we go?
Well, as if I knew, right?
Well, I hope you do.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right what you said. It makes us think about it. So the future is now, we're always talking about how do we do this for the future, but we've got children more and more now coming very different from what we were used to, because we swapped generations. We've been through through COVID and kids at home not being exposed to what they used to. So I think everything is changing so much all the time that we have to force ourselves to think that this is organic. We have to think as children as if you would compare them to a material, you would think about something that is liquid. They will take the shape of the space they are in. And so we have to be ever changing and thinking about what do we want these kids to look like and what our space is going to look like for they're shaped that way.
That's a great analogy, Audrey. I like that. They take the shape of whatever they're in. Actually, years ago, and I wish I could remember who said this, there's a fantastic quotation or a comment someone made that became a quotation. Children are like wet cement. Whatever falls on them makes an impression. So I suppose that's the other side of it, isn't it? Lara, how about you? How are you going to help us get through this minefield of what's going on in early childhood and choosing the best way for our children?
I think more and more we're understanding the huge responsibility that we have to the future. And I think we're understanding more and more the role that we play in creating that future. And I think ultimately, as practitioners, it's about, like you said earlier, staying very true to your values. For me, play is inherent in everything that we should be doing. And I think we need to keep sight of that and keep sight of the child in the center of that play and what that child needs. So I think as we see technology coming in, we need to be very aware that we need to also hold very firmly to what we know is really, really good early years practices. So I think making sure that we don't stray too far from some of those things is really, really important for me.
Great answer, thank you. And Sari, if I come to you last but not least, I mean, your role as operations and education director is huge. So how are you going to guide your different settings to find the right way, if there is one?
Well, I would say that, as Audrey was saying, that it's very organic how children learn. And I feel that we actually need to kind of take a step back. For some reason, the recent years, we've been going towards this very academic earliest education. And we realized that learning 1, 2, 3 and ABC by heart is more about parroting than learning anything at all. And as Lara is saying, the play is the key, but also to go back in time when children were able to choose what to play and able to be their own researchers in terms of looking for solutions, looking for their interests, and not only child-centered play, but also child-guided play. And we should be just a caterers or enable that to play. So I think if I remember my childhood, which is very, very long time ago, nobody was guiding us, even in early year settings, about our play. We played and we learned. And I think that we are taking, luckily, the step towards that across all the countries now.
That's a super answer, Sari. And you're right. I mean, thank you for making me feel that I'm not the only slightly older person on our call today. But yes, like you, I remember playing very freely, and I don't remember, certainly there weren't the dangers then, so we can't excuse ourselves of that. But I'm getting the sense from all of you here that this is about first focus on the child, know what this is about. But of course, we can't ignore the fact that the advent of AI, although AI has been with us for a very long time, I think we've just really sort of kind of focused on it in a different way. We can't ignore it, and actually neither should we, because this is the world that our children are born into. And there are many times when there is a place for technology, there is a place for AI. But personally, I'm very allergic to every child having an iPad all of the time. There has to be a difference. So my next question to you is about the advent of IT, and how you preserve what you know is good and high quality for early childhood, and how you, and I'm choosing my words carefully, integrate that technology into high quality learning and teaching in early childhood. So Lara, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. How do you manage the whole AI IT integration thing?
I think traditionally as educators, we've always been a bit panicked when it comes to technology and the integration of technology into classrooms. Over the years, whenever you mention something new that you're bringing in with the word technology linked to it, people always seem to be quite apprehensive. But I think it's really important that we see any technology, even AI, that comes into our classrooms as an enhancement to learning rather than as a replacement to something. And that's where, again, going back to those values, holding those values true and making sure that we don't stray too far from them, and that we look at how we can actually make learning better with technology rather than seeing where there's a gap that we can plug. It needs to be something that really is going to make the experience a lot better for the children that we care for every day.
And can I just take a follow-on question, Lara? So for your students, what would you say, is there a really good tip? Is there a special approach that you have? Is there something that you use that you would say everyone should get into this?
I have to say, I'm quite a big fan of things like remote control cars and things like the B-bots, and bringing those into the classroom in a very playful manner, because I think, again, they are very supportive and can be very creatively used within our play and within a classroom environment. And they're quite endless in what you can do with them as well. If you put them in front of children often will think very much outside of the box. They're really, really good for children to work together and collaborate with. And for me, those are two of my really big loves in the classroom.
Brilliant, thank you. That, you know, it doesn't, just because some things have been around for a long time doesn't make them not good at what we want to use them for. Kaz, you're nodding, so I'm guessing that's something you're driving forward in your school.
We are driving it forward in our school, and like Lara, we are true to our values. So we do ask, how does this enhance learning for our children, and what can it do that a teacher can't do? So some examples that we've been doing recently is in our learning centres. And when I say learning centres, we have a lot of learning centres in our classroom. We're in 15 plus learning centres. Our teachers have been using portable green screens, and we've trained the children to make their own videos. So if they're doing a weather report, our children did weather reports of fires happening in Australia, and on the green screen in the background, they had pictures of fires, and then they used them to retell stories, such as the gingerbread man with the story happening in the background. And we've been doing that. And then we've been using the app Freeform, which is an Apple app, and that enables the children during reflection time, they're able to screen their photos that they've taken onto the app. And then what they do is they then start using their phonics to label their pictures. And they do that, they started doing it, one child leading it, and now they'll do that as a whole class. And that's something that we've been trialing this year. And it means the teachers then have a record for each child that they can then share with the parents, and they can monitor their progress quite easily during the year. So there's just two very simple things that we've been using more and more recently, but we always go back to our values and ask the question, how does this impact upon the child's learning and make a real genuine difference?
Lovely, thanks, Kaz. Sari, what about you? What about Blossom Babilou?
So, first of all, we have taken as a position in Babilou that we do not recommend screens for children below 3 years old at all. And even after 3 years, it should be a limited time. And first of all, kind of used as a tool to interact with parents, for example, that it should be like, if there is a screen time, that it should be together with the parents on, as reading a book, basically, like that they go through the programs, they will see what is there and they discuss about it. So it's more of a communication and interaction with the parents or later on with the teachers. Also the fact, well, what Cass was saying, I love the idea when the gadget, the iPad is not used just to learn from the digital world, rather than using it to take pictures and create your own story or create something beyond the screen itself. And I like it when it is used as a tool, but not as a very, very like monotonic way of learning things, of watching videos or YouTube channels. But like I said, we have taken a stand in Babilou that below 3 years old, we don't recommend any screen. And across all our centers, we will not use screens, because we do know that in this country, the children are exposed to screens already at home. So we don't want to add that in our centers as on top of it.
That makes complete sense, Sari. You know, people have different views, but I know that the research has always indicated that certainly up to the age of 2, screen time is not a good idea. I have to say, though, with that aside, the only time I would endorse screen time is on a long-haul flight through the night if a child is crying. I'm all for the screen. Audrey, I noted you were sort of looking and listening to what everybody else is saying. I'm really curious about your view. I know you've always been very sort of outdoors, very hands-on. Your opinion, your thoughts on the whole AI, IT part?
I definitely don't go against it. I think we should use what's out there for us to enhance our practice and provide more powerful teaching. I do hold some like strong opinions about it regarding how you use it and what are you going to use it for. So I am always pro to use it as a tool, as a facilitator of what is going to be out there for the kids, and not as something they are going to use it. Because what I think as well, thinking about the whole organic thing and how things have changed across the years, we changed to a different generation. Back in the days, our kids would be playing a lot outside, and there was very little exposition to that, exposure to that. But now it's all they do when they go home, especially if you are here where the weather is very tricky at this time of the year. There's not a lot of outdoor possibilities. So I think in the classroom, what I try to do is to use it as a facilitator. So use AI and technology to enhance the quality of teaching and to integrate in the process. For example, just had a very interesting activity now where the kids are exploring ways to communicate with the world and how to do it, what do you use. And we had a call, not a call, but a video from another school in Brazil. And I asked them how they wanted to reply back. And they said, we want to make a video call. And then we went to the globe and talked about time difference, that when we're in school, they are sleeping. And so what can you do? Problem solve, critical thinking. And so we chose to make a video and put the video for them and then make a letter. And then, so just like to use as a tool, as a facilitator, but not as the final product of everything, and try not to put the kids too much to use it. And it's more of a me thing other than the children.
No, that's great. They're super answers from all of you. And it's interesting, a couple of questions came up, a couple of comments came up in the chat. Amar is saying that the PISA results show that using more than an hour of technology for learning a day has an inverse relation with student achievement for 15-year-olds. Okay, he's saying, wouldn't it have a more negative effect on young learners? And I think what you've all said is you're mindful of the fact that these are very young learners. And of course, it depends where they are in their learning. But the emphasis I'm hearing from you is that it's about ensuring that that's not the driver of everything. And having recently come from working in Neom in Saudi Arabia, which is, of course, a high-tech city, we did use technology with the youngest children, but only in limited amounts. And also, I wouldn't discount the use of VR goggles sometimes with very small children, used guardedly and wisely, so that it actually opens a part of the world that you might not have seen before, but only, and you've all emphasized this, only if it enhances the learning, not because it replaces it. Sari, yes, please, go ahead.
If you don't mind me adding, I think in early years, like we are talking about so young children, we are talking about up to like maximum 4 years old, and parents getting very worried about this digital world and how it's evolving, and now my child doesn't learn if I don't give that gadget to them. But if the children are learning even basic board games, it's already coding, and it is about learning the strategies which is then used in digital world. So people, the engineers and all the designers are saying nowadays that this kind of a hands-on critical thinking and problem solving and using, like I said, board games for coding, or like Lara was saying, the cars that are with the remote control, that is already a step forward to the digital world. It doesn't have to go to the end product as an iPad. It can be something in between as well. And talking about early years now, not teenagers.
Absolutely, really good comment. Please, ladies, feel free to interact. That's absolutely fine. I'm conscious of time moving, so can I move to something else now, which is, and it's interesting because Geraldine posted a comment in the chat, which was that children are playing differently now, which is a lovely segue into the next question for you, really, which is about neuroscience. It's about the development of all aspects of the child and early childhood, and you've alluded to it before. Lots of impacts on childhood, lots of things going on. COVID's already been mentioned, social and emotional aspects of learning. So I'm a huge believer in nothing without joy. In early childhood, everything should feel, was it Paul Clay that said childhood is a dream where everything is possible? I'm hanging on to that for adulthood too, but it's not quite so effective. So how would what do we do with this minefield of mindfulness and well-being and mental health and social emotional learning? How do we know which of the elements are the ones that we must preserve in our there you are. Kaz, did you catch the last of that?
No, we didn't catch the last bit.
Sorry. So my last bit was the burning question, which was, how do we know which of the elements of social emotional learning, well-being, what's key that will help? I know we can't future-proof our children, but to give them all the tools in their armory that will help them to go forward as securely, socially, emotionally safe, if you like. Is that working? Did you catch us?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Pam. And I think goes back to what you say. We want happy children. If children are happy and they're excited to learn, then that school will stay with them through life. If they're inquisitive and they want to inquire, and also their social development is so key. But I think as practitioners, especially those of us that work in through schools, we've been pushed down the route of tracking them in numeracy and literacy and science. And actually, what we've started to do now is take a back step and say, no, let's actually set rubrics for their behaviour. How are they behaving in class? How do they settle in? And looking more at those softer skills and focusing more on those, because if we get those right, then the others will happen naturally with good quality teaching and learning. So I think it's really important that we make sure that we hold on to our values and go back to those at time, rather than following the drum of what they need for when they get to high school. We need to put it in place much longer. We know what they need. And I think coming out of COVID, one thing for us is we teach our children with learning needs how to self-regulate, but do we specifically teach all our children how to self-regulate? And I think in our classrooms, we need quiet zones or quiet areas where children can actually sometimes just go and sit and chill and not do anything. We're very focused on children need to be busy all the time and engaged. But actually, as adults, sometimes if you look at people who are quite relaxed and got good relaxation techniques, they'll just sit and watch the world go by. And I think we're missing a trick there. We need to teach our children that as part of mindfulness, that it's okay just to take time out and sit and watch what's going on.
Yeah, it's a great comment, Kaz. Thank you for that. Lara, any thoughts on this one? Social emotional learning, what do we do? How do we future-proof our children?
I think it's become very visible as part of early years in the last few years. Probably COVID was a big nod to that. And I think that, you know, the basics of making sure that children are understanding their feelings, understanding their emotions, that they have those key skills in place, and that we as practitioners know how to support those on a day-to-day basis. Because I think something that's very, very important is making sure that our staff are trained in this area to know how to provide the right support for those children. And as Kaz said as well a little bit, I think the environments need to reflect the need for having those calm spaces, those spaces where you can go and take yourself off if you'd like a few quiet minutes. And the environment themselves are quite calm as well. Because there was a time when early years classrooms were busy places and very colourful, and I think now we've learned as well that to support some of the needs of the children, that we need to take a calmer approach to our classrooms and the layouts to allow children to be better at self-regulation and be able to build the relationships with each other that they need on a day-to-day basis. So for me, those are the things that are really, really important.
And living them is the key, isn't it? Holding on to that when other people are saying, why are the children being still? Why are they not doing X, Y, and Z? Not realizing that they are actually doing an awful lot by doing that. Audrey, there was a big nod and a big smile there. Thoughts?
I could not agree more with what is being said. One of the things that I think is the most important one whenever you deal with social emotional development is lots of things change and the way things are dealt with change, but there is one thing that doesn't change, and those things are the feelings, the emotions. They're always the same. So as long as you teach your children to invite those feelings in so you can deal with them and teach them how to deal with them, then it should be okay. So I've always say in my classroom, invite your feelings. It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel that. We don't want you not to be sad. We don't want you not to cry. I'll never tell a child to stop crying during adaptation. I'll never tell a child that it's okay when they say goodbye to their moms, because it's not okay. And getting from what Lara said about the environment, it's the same thing. Once I always use this as a strategy, and I've always tried to tell the teachers to do the same thing, is try not to change your environment so ever often. Not the environment can change, but try not to change all of the resources every week or every other week, because they need to feel bored. They need to not know what to do with those blocks anymore, so the ideas keep coming, because they live in times now that everything is just ready for them. Everything is just being catered, and their lives are busy. They have gymnastics and swimming and football, so they need a time when they get bored so they can activate that part of the brain, they get creative and try to think through things and how they're going to get over with it and play with it in a different way or deal with something in a different way.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. So there's a comment from Sana in the, I hope I'm saying that correctly, in the chat, which is, so it won't be wrong to say that we can turn everyday moments into learning. And I would say, absolutely, yes, that's what you're saying, isn't it? And I was reading something this morning. It was actually about children crying. Sorry, that sounds like I read really, really miserable things, and I don't. It just happened to be something I was reading. But it was saying, you know, just because a child is crying because their cup is the wrong color, it's a really big deal. And small things make us cry too. So why is it different? It's about remembering what it's like to be a child. And, you know, the yellow cup may not be as nice as the blue one that you had yesterday, and it's big. Sari, making you laugh. Any thoughts? I'll come back to you, Audrey. Sari, and then I'll come back to Audrey.
Yes, you make me laugh because I fully agree with you. And I agree with all the ladies talking about the social-emotional development and the importance of it. Now, I'm going to be the negative one here again. we've been having the research on this topic, how in the future, unfortunately, our babies and the current babies who are growing are going to have the lack in that development because, again, the screen. And not the usage of the child using the screen, but the parents using the screen, the phone, at the same time when it should be the emotional connection with their children. I saw a study where they actually were videotaping a mom and a baby, and how the interaction was beautiful between the baby and the mother, and the baby is mirroring every single aspect of the mom's face, and then the mother is turning her face to the phone, and the baby is still trying, and it's heartbreaking. So I do think that, I don't want to make anybody feel guilty. We all use screens and we all use phones, but the fact is that we don't know yet what is the impact, because we don't have the research and we don't have the data yet. What is the impact of the current usage of the screens? So we have to be mindful as parents, but at the same time, obviously, as educators as well.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it's not about naming and shaming anyone. You know, we are all human at the end of the day, and those things do matter, but it is a very good point. Audrey, I know you're bursting to say something. I'm coming back to you.
Sorry, yes, no, I couldn't agree more with what was said. I was thinking, it changed my train of thoughts, and I was just thinking about what Sari said, and it keeps me thinking from the perspective of an educator as well. I would be more interested in reading more about this article, because educators are often behind the screen as well, because we are often documenting with our iPads. So I'm wondering what could come out of that as well.
Yeah, it's a good question, Audrey. We do that, absolutely. And I think, you know, we don't hide behind the screen, but I think what Sari is referring to, years ago, there's a forerunner of what you're seeing. It was called the silent face experiment, and it was done by Harvard Center for the Developing Child, where the mother interacted with the child for a while and then was asked not to interact, although she was facing the child. And the distress for both of them, really, and it was fine. It lasted a few seconds and then it was all over. But that's a very good point that you make about the screen. It would be interesting. Direct research, I think there is some, Audrey, I will post it, you know, with the GESS webinar too. But there is an interesting book by Jordan Shapiro called The New Childhood. It's a couple of years old now, but it was all about the advent of technology and the impact on childhood, and how he changed his own mind when his own boys, I can't remember, started to use technology. So I love it that we are going to leave some things in the air, some things about technology, some things about early childhood social and emotional learning, because I'm now going to take you into another area of learning, which is that of, you know, all of this, not versus nature, but surrounded by nature, incorporating nature, sustainability, sustainable goals. And I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial. There has been some lip service to outdoor learning and biophilic design, making sure that children, adults are surrounded by nature, or if they can't access it, that at least there are images of nature and plants around you. I know you can't see in here, but I've got plants in this side of the room. So I'm obviously going to come to Audrey first on this one, simply because you're at Fairgreen, which is in Sustainability City, which is a sustainable school, an eco school. So what are your thoughts on, you know, how do we approach sustainability with small children authentically and not pay lip service to it?
I like that you use the word authentically. Again, I think the environment, and when I say environment, I say classroom, plays a massive role in this. And going back to early years thinking, it is the foundation stage. It is called the critical stage for a reason, because it's where we're building pillars. It's where we're doing all the work, so the building goes up really strong and it doesn't fall off. It's to do with the environment and the culture and how you present yourself and your choices to your children. So it's about a child, for example, going into KG2 or moving up to primary, looking at a class where they see laminated things on the wall and they think that that's weird. And they start to question choices because they know that that is not okay. So it's about, I think it's building a culture of being integrated in an environment where first they don't see things that harm the planet for them, so then they can start creating a position about it and start thinking critically about it. So I think for early years teachers, educators, the most important part is for you to adapt your environment and think very carefully about your choices and what you are showing to your kids in your environment and how you are dealing with it. So they grow into this place thinking that that should be the norm. When they go to a place that's not the norm, they start to question whether that is a good thing or not.
Great answer. And that's also about future-proofing, or at least preparing children, giving them the tools. Kaz, authenticity in terms of sustainability for young children?
I was just thinking slightly off a tangent here. I was thinking about our outdoor learning environment, and we have the tiniest piece of grass possible, but our children love to go out there and dig for bugs and put bugs into cups and count how many bugs they've got and dig big holes. And that they just absolutely really enjoy that. And I think where schools are missing a trick in the UAE is actually maybe not necessarily grass, but actually developing a desert learning environment outside with trees and plants that are appropriate for the country that we live in, so children can go out and dig and find bugs and explore. Whereas too many schools now you go to, especially new schools, and they've got the impressive looking for parents, shiny play equipment with the soft, brightly coloured floor that as an early years practitioner just makes you want to weep. And I think that's where we're missing a really big trick going back. And then I was just wondering about forest schools. And I was looking at videos the other day on forest schools and thinking, wow, this is really impressive. But then when I dug down and looked at the videos, the children weren't doing anything exciting. Somebody else made the fire and they were allowed quite sort of close, but not that close, to toast the marshmallow. But actually, shouldn't it be more than that, where the children are taught how to make the fire and then work around it? And I just don't think there's enough of that happening. And I think we play lip service to it too much. And we need to be a bit more adventurous in what we're doing and how we look at it, and maybe look more to Scandinavia and their models of working and what they do and adapt that.
Absolutely. I absolutely, Kaz. I couldn't agree with you more. And I've always thought, forest schools are a great idea. Again, not a criticism of anyone who's doing this, but you've got a different kind of environment here. And it's not just about the UAE, it's about different parts of the world. Schools are starting to look at oasis, the idea of the oasis now. But yes, and I've also seen people do far more with 2 paving slabs and a pot plant than in an all singing. But I've also seen the reverse, people doing wonderful things with an all singing or dancing, usually because the early childhood educators have been involved in designing it. And I'm going to come to Sari as the person who has the operations under their belt.
Yeah, and I'm here trying to yes. So coming from a Nordic country, the forest schools, as you were describing, the problem, I think globally, the problem is that we are not anymore allowing our children to take risks, even if it is in a safe environment, but we are not allowed them to take risks. And this is when the fire is made by the teacher, or the knife is used by the teacher. And again, if we would go step back 20, 30 years ago, I'm sure that across all the countries, the children had more freedom to take risks. So I don't know why we all of a sudden are in an environment where we bubble wrap our children, and not understanding that when they grow up, they need to have that sense of kind of a fear as well about something might happen if I'm stupid enough to jump from the cliff. But if we are all the time making sure that nothing ever happens to the child, she will not learn the risks of the normal life. And going back to the sustainability, learn by example, I'm sure like this is the best way for us adults, showing that we, for example, recycle, we use sustainable materials. And then what we try to do, again, yes, climate is what it is here. But what we try to do in our early learning centers is to bring the nature inside. So using the natural materials, using the materials from nature. So I've been carrying like bags full of combs from Finland just for the children to get this touch and feel, because in early years, the sensory play is a big matter, and that's the way they learn about the nature also the best.
Brilliant. And it's lovely to have you there, Sari, from a Nordic background, because, you know, it is the authenticity of that. There are two books that have just struck me before I go to Lara on this one. One is a book called Unearthing Childhood. And it goes right through from the Stone Age. And it says, you know, in the Stone Age, not that any of us were there, I'm really not quite that old. You know, children did play with knives. They did play with tools, and through the years. So that's one of them. And the other one is called Free Range Kids, and it's by an American author who for all sorts of reasons, I'll let you read it yourself, gives you options on how much of a risk you will take. But if you're right, if children are always wrapped in cotton wool, they're always safe, they're actually always in danger, because they will never know the danger. Lara, some interesting tangents there. How's Innoventures thinking about this?
I think there's some really interesting points. Like Sari said, we are very risk adverse now in our practice. You know, when I was growing up, children used to climb the trees and things like that, and there was a lot of learning that could come out of some of those things. And I think now our outdoor environments have been very much sanitized, so that element has gone from them. And I was lucky to visit some of the Nordic countries on a number of occasions. And the thing that struck me was the total enjoyment and the total freedom that those children had in those environments outside. You know, they would go off for walks in forests and collect berries, and they would be eating them, and they'd be able to identify what they were collecting. It was a true freedom, which I don't think all children are lucky enough to be exposed to, I would say, in a way. But I think the outdoor learning environment is a huge thing for us. We're very lucky. We have fantastic outdoor spaces, but it's also how you use those outdoor spaces and make sure, again, that the children have choices in how they use those spaces, choices in the way that they wish to learn when they're outdoors, making sure that they have quiet areas as well as areas where they can run and be crazy and do what little ones do. I think that's really, really important. And when it comes to sustainability as a topic, I think it's really important that we make the learning real for those children. I think it's important that we make it so that it's understandable in their own world, in their own context, rather than giving them big ideas that they can't actually process. We need to really make it things that they can manage and handle as a little one. So for us, that's something we look at. We look at very much the recycling processes, what they can collect at home, how they can sort things, and do the learning around those kind of things as well.
Yeah, really, really good points, Lara. Thank you. It's really, really insightful. And I will move us on from this topic because we have another question to go. But one I'd like to leave hanging in the air, and for our guests who are listening today, was I was reading something that was talking about sustainability and how you support it with young children. My word is authentically. And it was, well, we're actually terrifying children because we're showing them, you know, whales caught in nets and dolphins dying and the sea full of plastic. So I'm not going to ask you to answer it, but it's an interesting one for all of us to ponder. How much is too much? How far is too far? And how little is too little? But I think you've given us some really excellent food for thought there. Which brings me brings me to, I suppose it does come down to in a way, my final question for you today, which is really about, and someone alluded to it in the beginning, which is this pressure of the academic, and we need to have the children ABCs. I think, Sari, you raised that as well. And of course, that's important. You know, if you want to learn to drive, you've got to actually pass your test first, and then you can drive whatever you want if you have the amount of money to buy whatever you want. But for this one, there's often, and this is no disrespect to any principals or heads who are also under pressure on this call, but there is often a top-down, you know, they've got to be ready for this, they've got to be ready for that, they've got to do this number, that number, the other number. And then there's what we truly know about children and the fact that they have to also have the life skills for, I was going to say 21st century, but we are a quarter of the way through that now, which means we're kind of on our way hurtling towards the 22nd century. So what are the skills that we should be promoting? And I use skills in all of its meanings, not just simply the phonics skills, etc. How do we make sure that we're teaching the right skills or helping children to develop the right skills for the world that they're going into, given all the things that we've talked about today, which is a big question? And how do we, two questions really, how do we impress on those of us who are saying, come on, that actually, as the Te Whaariki so clearly emphasizes, that children, and I'm going to paraphrase, come not with their own strengths to us as educators, but with all of the strengths, the skills and talents of their family, their tribe and their ancestors. They are already incredibly well skilled. What do we do? And how do we influence upwards to say, hold on, we'll get there? I'm going to see if anybody would like to take that first. I've been choosing you, which has been my privilege. Lara, go for it. Why not?
I think it's hugely about balance. I think, you know, children do learn at their own pace very much. It's about making sure that we expose them to the right things at the right times, and make sure that as we go back to kind of the beginning of the session, that we hold true to the values that we know work with children, the things that we know are important, and make sure that we give them the skills that they need for life, which goes far away from necessarily knowing phonics. It's more about things like being able to solve problems, being able to collaborate and interact with other children and other adults around you. It's those kind of skills that I think is much more important, that creativity. And these are often keywords that we throw around in early years. But I think actually looking at what they truly mean to you as a practitioner or as a parent, and following that really. Because the phonics will come and the number sense will come, and all of those skills come once that child is happy and having a love of learning.
That's beautifully put. And I'm actually going to move to Audrey, because Audrey, you said something earlier, which was about when we were talking about AI, and you were talking about the children wanting to speak to children in another part of the world, in Brazil, and saying, well, actually we can't because they're asleep, and using it as a way to teach geography. So your children are probably at a far more advanced stage than would be expected for children of their age and stage to know about geography. Not that I think age and stage is a thing. Can you pick up from where Lara has taken us?
Definitely, I think, and this is the question of 100 million dirhams, isn't it? It is, I think we have to be extremely careful, because we live in a culture nowadays that everything is just being rushed, and we only have children for a certain amount of years in their life. Once they are 13, they can never ever go back. You only keep getting older. You can be an adult for the rest of your life, but you won't be a child, an early years child, until you're 7 years old. And it is a matter of prioritizing and knowing what is important for those foundation stage, for that critical stage of their lives. Phonics will come, as Lara beautifully said, the numbers will come. You have to research, you have to be an early years specialist to know what skills you need to work on that will support that in the future. You cannot rush a child. You don't teach name writing by teaching them how to write their names. You don't teach them maths by teaching them numbers. And I think when you research and when you learn about early years, and when you really focus and remember that you are building pillars, I think you start making decisions that make more sense regarding their learning. And children are there, and school systems are there for us to see where X, Y, and Z is not going to work because you skipped this, and that. And so you really have to think about it critically, use your knowledge, research, learn about the earlier stage and what is important, and what are the pillars that need to be built for those skills to be developed further on when they move up to school.
Oh, I think we should all form a government department, I've decided. Thank you, Audrey. That's great. Kaz, go on, big smile. So you obviously, I'm assuming that you agree with what's been said so far. And what would you add?
I do agree completely with what's been said so far. And I was just thinking about it a little bit more deeply as you were talking. And I just scribbled down like a few words as well. I was thinking about values. We talk about our values, but do we explicitly teach children values that they need. I was just thinking about politicians around the world and if they all have values. And that led me to think, actually, we do need to explicitly teach our children values more than manners, but also making sure that they're kind, flexible, adaptable, compassionate. How do we do that as early years practitioners? Do we do it instinctively? Do all practitioners do this? Or do we actually need to make sure that everybody does it? And then how are we going to measure that? And then thinking about skills for life, we want people who can speak, who can hold an audience, so definitely that communication and collaboration, but also we want people who can be engaged and focused so that when they come to do their more formal learning, they have those skills where they're actually able to concentrate in lessons and get the best out of them. And I think that's what we need to think about in early years, but definitely about the children's values. How do we explicitly teach them values?
Very, very good point, Kaz. Thank you. And the last word on that, then I'm going to go to you, Sari.
So I can't agree more than what everybody, they're actually stealing the words out of my mouth in so many ways. But one of the, in early years, again, when I'm talking about below 3 or 4, the environment, what we provide for the children is already teaching enough. And I always say I kind of exaggerate by, if we provide the right environment, which is sparking the imagination of the children and their willingness to learn and inquire and search for answers, we don't even need to teach anything. It teaches them already. We are there just to enable exactly what you guys were saying now about those like communication skills and all that. And that's definitely, and added to that, and I think this will be also in the future, the children's well-being so that they can look after themselves, because I think the world is changing in a way that it is going to be more like independent, like everybody is more independent nowadays. You don't look for help that easily. So our children need to understand what is the meaning of their well-being, that they will be looking after that well-being even when they grow up.
Absolutely. Wow. So much there. And I'm just also watching the chat a little bit. So there's one question I am going to pick. I'm conscious of our time, but thank you all for those brilliant, brilliant ideas and thoughts. And I can feel your hearts beating, if that makes sense, in terms of early childhood. Interesting question here. Again, I may mispronounce the name, so forgive me if I do. I'm going to say Imeline or Imeline, I'm not sure. Good question. How important is parent collaboration in all of this? Now, we have all experienced what I would call the WhatsApp mafia. I believe that parents only want the best for their children. Of course they do. And there is an anxiety about checking what everybody else's children are doing. So how do we help parents to get it? Particularly in terms of the last comments, you know, the numbers will come, the skills will come. It's about the values. It's about letting the child be the child. It's all of that. How do we get parents to understand it? I'm opening that to the floor. Anyone to go first, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a long afternoon. Go on, Audrey.
I think it's funny when you say that, because everybody, I loved the WhatsApp mafia term that you used. I'm going to start using, if I may, if you allow me.
Please do.
As you know, Pam knows, you know that I'm all pro I use the Reggio Emilia Foundation a lot, and so building the sense of community is crucial, because when you have everyone on your sides and everyone putting the children and the child at the center of everything, it makes it easier for both sides, because education don't start and stop in school as much as it doesn't start and stop at home. It's a cycle. It goes back and forth all the time. And so again, it goes back to building a relationship. And I know this might sound very, very vague, but it is about building a relationship with your parents. And once they understand that you are putting their children at the center of your choices, and this is what it is, they understand and they start valuing you. However, I know that I might say there might be other ones, but I think our profession, I think being an educator is a tricky one, because you don't get as many opinions as you get in other professions. You don't go to a doctor and you just start dictating how he should treat your heart disease, as we do in the classroom, where everyone else is coming up with opinions and how you should do something. But I have years and years of practice, and the most effective way to get parents on board and to have a classroom that flows is to build a relationship and incorporate everyone and create the sense of community.
And I think looking at the screen, everyone is saying absolutely. And I don't think we can really add to that. And I can remember something I did many years ago when I was having particular struggles in supporting some parents to get it as to why we did an awful lot of experiential co-constructed learning to invite the parents in, and I gave them a very, very complicated construction kit with no instructions and said, I want you to find out how this works. And they said, what about the manual? No, you're not having the manual. I want you to find out. And actually what came out of it was, in a very simple way, actually, if we'd read the manual, we'd have been here all day, but actually doing this, we now know how it works. And I did the same experiment with a group and gave them the manual and videoed both sessions. That it was my frustration that actually drove that, but it did work, so you'd be pleased to know. Thank you. Question, I'm going to have to take one more question, really, which is, what's the question there? Is there a specific methodology to follow when choosing content or curricula for early childhood which matches the sustainable goal approach? Is there anything, or is there nothing, or anyone? Any specific curriculum? Sorry.
I would say that I can just say out of our experience what we are doing here. So Babilou, first of all, have created their own sustainable education approach. So it's not curriculum, obviously. I would say that we just need to blend. Like there's so much in Reggio Emilia, there's so much in Montessori, there's a lot of things in EYFS or even the national curriculums of various countries. So I think the best way is to blend the best practices, and you will find the right way to teach your children.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm conscious of time, so thank you for that. And I'm going to I'm going to ask you politely, not make you, do one more thing for our colleagues who've kindly given their time to join us today, and I know you've kindly given the same. I'd like us to end with just perhaps one word, one sentence, something for our colleagues to take away that is the response to, so what is it? What is the one thing or the couple of things that we need to hold on to in a changing world of early years education that means that we are basically putting on our seatbelt for the future? Lara, can I ask you to go first? Sorry, there's a big question, I know. Just one word.
I think for me it goes back to holding on to what matters to you and what's true for you as an early years educator. I think so often we see trends and fads, and all of it goes back, as we said at the beginning, and we continue to say, to your values and what really is important and what you hold true in every day and every classroom. And the fact that you don't just say it, because there's a lot of people, again, in education that say a lot of the key words, but you actually live it. And I think if you can live what you believe, then that's the best that you can do by your children.
Thank you very much, Lara. Kaz?
Quite similar. Keep your values and relationships with the child at the heart of all your decisions, and always ask yourself, would I like to be a child in this class or in this school?
Lovely. Sari?
I would say that this is not only for the educators, it's also for the parents. And I'm repeating a little bit what Audrey was saying earlier. Respect the time, the concept of time with the children, because again, it's not a passage to adulthood. It is a very valuable time itself. So, and learn with the child's pace, so that we follow the child's pace rather than trying to spoon feed anything of our own.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sari. And finally, final word to you, Audrey.
For me, it's what always stays with me every year after year. Give yourself time to watch the children and to listen to them and to hear what they have to say. They will lead your way. They will tell you what to do. It's going to come from them. If you listen to them, if you spend time just watching them play and sitting down and spending time with them, everything will be easier. There is no better curriculum. There's no perfect school, but children will be children everywhere in the world. And if you give yourself time just to watch them, you're going to get a lot more answers than you think.
Absolutely super comments from all of you. Thank you very much, Audrey, for the final comment. I'm always really energized, and I know people use that word, but I really am. I mean, this is like 4 shots of caffeine working with you this afternoon. Not that I needed it, but it reinforces for me the passion, the quality, and the commitment of people, of the right people working in early childhood. And I know my screen is full of the right people, including Danny, who is now an honorary early childhood person. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of you for giving such time. I know Danny will want to say a few words too, and to our colleagues. I apologize that we couldn't go through all of the questions, but I hope in our conversations that we've picked up some of those comments. And I would just like to leave it with one final comment, which matters an awful lot to me, which is children are not the people of tomorrow. They are the people of today. Thank you very much. Danny.
Again, thank you so much, Pam, Lara, Kaz, Audrey, and Sari. That was such an informative and interesting discussion. And I'm not going to lie, I definitely took some notes for when my wife and I become parents very soon. So thank you so much for the valuable tips and insights. We've had some great questions come in, as you mentioned, Pam. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to some of them. We'll try to get to them by email after the webinar. And if anyone else from the audience has any further questions or would like to connect with our speakers, please send an email to marketing@guesseducation.com. You'll also be redirected to a short survey once we end the webinar. So please tell us what you thought and if there are any topics you'd like to hear about. And if you'd like to enjoy the webinar all over again, you can do so, as we'll be uploading it to our GESS Education website and YouTube channel and sending it across out to all attendees by email. A massive thank you to our panel and also you, our audience, for tuning in. Please make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter, follow us on social media, and visit guesseducation.com to stay informed of our latest or of our upcoming webinars and events. Also, registration for GESS Dubai is now open, and you can do so for free through the GESS Dubai website, especially if you enjoyed this webinar and would like to meet Pam and the rest of the panelists in person, as we'll continue this important discussion at the show. Until next time, please take care and have a lovely day and rest of the week.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.